All right. Got it.
Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Not a huge audience at the moment, but maybe we'll get some more joining and hopefully we'll get some watching online afterwards as well. But really delighted to welcome Martin Birch to our webinar tonight. And before we kick off, I'd like to do a quick acknowledgement of country. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet electronically today. I'm on Ngunnawal country and I pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here and in our community. So thank you very much everyone for that. As I mentioned, we are really, really lucky to have Martin here from Omnisure to talk to us today. And I know, Martin, you've done a lot of preparation for this particular webinar, and I'm really, really grateful for your time. So thank you so much. I really will be delighted to hear what you have to say. So please.
Good. Thanks, everybody, and welcome. My name is Martin Birch, and I'm going to start off with a quick overview of the agenda. Just going to spend a few short minutes on an intro to myself and Omnisure. I've catered for 2 and 13 minutes to look at some topics from our survey that we sent out. They are firstly on property insurance, which covers cover types and basis of settlement. Going to have a look at first-party and third-party insurance and risk management, and that'll take us 15 minutes, and then we've got a Q&A. And then we're going to have a look at some cyber liability, what it's designed for, how does the policy respond, and what protection does it give me, and then some more time for Q&A after that. I'm not going to spend too much time. General advice warning as prescribed under financial services. Now an intro. The main points from the slide really, in a nutshell, that I'd like you to note is that in addition to being in general insurance, I've got a farming background, so that's mainly livestock. Sheep, goats, dairy, and beef cattle, mainly stud breeding. And I have a special interest in animal health, nutrition, and disease. I did some electives such as veterinary science in my bachelor's. And insurance, I've got underwriting, claims, policy wording, dispute and arbitration experience, and co-founded an agricultural underwriting agency and a farmers mutual fund. So I work closely with reinsurance companies, Munich Re and Reinsurance, and I have a few qualifications in the space. So I think there's a reasonable fit for talking to the Protein Association. I am interested generally in what's going on. I thought the next slide is very briefly, it's just if anyone is interested in ESG, which is a huge topic, but in particular the nexus with ag and the legal obligations, directors and officers' obligations according to current law and what's happening with climate change, and in particular reporting obligations. I spent a lot of time, 4 months, preparing this. It's a fairly comprehensive document. It's a resource. Please contact me. I can actually send you a hard copy, although you can have a quick look at the link at the bottom. In particular, chapter 13 is all about agricultural investment fund managers. So why do those types of cover and basis of settlement in the first party, third party issues matter? Well, because it affects the price you pay, how much money you'll get paid, and who gets paid. So I think that's sufficient reason to have a quick look at this. So we're in the first half of the webinar. What is, So I want to start by considering 3 claim examples, just to introduce some curiosity and perhaps pique the interest of some participants. And the first scenario is, let's just say, and by the way, I'm assuming that most people have an ag background or are on hobby farms or farms. I know there are some that are processing food, maybe in a sort of industrial estate and so on. But my assumption is that people are generally sort of ag and farm pack sort of base. So scenario number 1, let's just say you've got an old shed that you want to insure. The roof is rusty and in poor condition. The wooden poles just as a support structure. There's no floor, just an earthy natural soil. It's worth maximum 12 grand, but you insure this to your broker for 50,000. So you get the schedule back from your broker, and you have a look at the policy schedule, and it says barn, top paddock, just for some description. Sum insured 50k, excess 500, cover type is defined events. The base of settlement is indemnity. Yep, that all looks okay. What is your expectation if a claim occurs? So this obviously is an example of a property damage claim. And the next two examples would be liability. But what is your expectation having regard to what I've just read out, the sum insured and so on, and the basis of settlement? So scenario 2 is, let's assume on a farm, your 13-year-old daughter comes back from boarding school, brings 2 friends with them, and they ask mum if they can go for a ride in the back paddock. So mum says, gives them firm instructions to her daughter, only you drive, take care, and you don't go fast, and so on, blah, blah, blah. So guess what happens? The 13-year-old boy, halfway down the track, says, oh, I want to have a go. And after a bit of debate, he takes the wheel, and what does a 13-year-old boy do? After driving around, he says, oh, let's go faster. He rolls the ATV, and the other friend is a girl, 13-year-old girl as well, is pinned under the all-terrain vehicle. They can't lift it up, and she's taken. So what do you think will happen? What is your expectation? Where is this covered? It's a rhetorical question, right? But just apply your mind. And the third scenario is, again, your 12-year-old son brings a mate from boarding school to the farm. They're out having some fun, and they're riding their bikes on a tennis court at the main homestead. And the young visitor is taking a corner around the tennis net pole. They've got that metal bar that you wind up the net there, and he slips there on his bike, and his eye is gouged out. What do you think is the situation in terms of liability, and how does that relate to, this experience that we're going through now? So turning to the first topic, first party and third party. Just to understand the policies and the terminology, first party relates to insurance cover where there are 2 parties to the insurance contract, the insurance company and you, the insured, for whom the contract is designed and is intended to, or is written to protect. The second party is the insurer. So that's quite simple, but you won't hear that term in the insurance landscape in Australia. It's basically first party, and then for insurance, and then you've got the other bucket, the other kinds or class of insurance, which is called the third party insurance. So this is designed to protect you against liability for either property damage or personal injury to someone else, a third party. They are strangers to the insurance contract. They're neither the insured person, they're not the insurer, they're someone else that comes out of left field. This insurance, this class of insurance, has the potential to, for huge claims. I'm happy to talk about it later. For example, horse riding, personal injury claim for a 16-year-old schoolgirl on a small holding. We're looking at $20 million as a payout. It'll sink most people, I think, on the webinar, and most insurer farmers in Australia. The policy responds, these third-party policies responds to your legal liability for the harm caused. Liability and legal liability are 2 different things. I'm talking now in the context of a public liability policy or product liability policy for that matter. It's all about a wrong. English law in Australia, it talks about torts are a wrong that you do to someone else. And this fancy word, it's quite apt though, is a tortious liability. It sounds a bit like a tortoise, but it's a critical ingredient of proving negligence as a foundation. That's why they say legal liability, you need to prove negligence in this, whereas civil liability does not necessarily include that element of negligence. So as I mentioned, I was talking about public liability, and when it boils down to an accident, it's your insurance company's claims department that is, in the first instance, just going to take control, because the first thing is they've got to review the policy wording and the incident that's occurred, and they've got to decide to grant indemnity to you. That's the first part of a liability claim. They've got to grant indemnity, your insurer. What they do is basically they assess whether the claim falls within the terms of the covering clause. The second part is to accept liability. What they're doing on your behalf is just saying, yeah, in our experience, we think that a judge will find you legally liable. And in that instance, they say, we are now going to negotiate the settlement. I can talk more about the claims processes later. Other examples of third-party policies are things like professional indemnity and management liability policies. And some liability policies have both first-party and third-party covers, and one of them is cyber liability, by way of an example, of which we're going to spend a bit of time on later. So these things are quite relevant because they decide who's going to get paid money. That in a liability policy, you don't get any money. The claim is negotiated and the settlement is paid to the claimant. Cover types.